Hello and welcome to another edition of Talking Devils. Little bit later this week because of a spooky Halloween we had on Sunday. But I'm glad that now I've got two guests this week. And I'm going to start off first with my sidekick, Scott Wootton. Scott, I believe this week you're playing for Morecambe and not Wickham, like I said last week.
Yeah.
So apologies for that. Former Manchester United centre half Scott Wootton's on with us again today. Scott, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good, thanks. How are you, Dave?
Yeah, not too bad. I sent the kids to school this morning and spent most of my morning stealing their candy. So yeah, it's been a productive morning. Very.
It was a good trick or treat session then.
Oh yeah, they go crazy over here. When they give a lot of them give out the large Snicker bars. Which. I put them away for safekeeping for the rest of the week. So, and yourself, I mean, what was it like in the UK? Was it, I'm sure the sun was shining and everything was great in the end of October.
Certainly not what you just said. Weather was absolutely horrific. I actually went to the Lake District for the night up in the northwest, and it just rained. Nice. And it was a lovely spot, but the weather was terrible. Certainly not what you're experiencing over the pond for sure.
No, I was walking around last night in shorts, so 10 o'clock at night. So it was nice. It was a little bit chilly now. It dropped to about 21. So
No, thanks for that.
And we have a special guest this week. How do I describe this man?
Just don't. Probably for the best.
He'll hammer me for this, but a legend in the in the literature world, especially on Manchester United. He's brought out many amazing books on Manchester United. He has an upcoming one on Sammy McIlroy, King Eric, George Best, my all-time favorite, Fergie's Fledglings. Introducing Mr. Wayne Barton. Wayne, how are you doing on this Halloween? What would we call it? Post-Halloween day.
Yeah, we call it 1st of November over here, Dave. Yeah, I'm all right.
In America, we gotta big it up. Everything's bigged up over here. So
yeah, I'm all right. I've got a bit of the old flu. If anyone listened live to the podcast earlier with Paul Parker, they will have heard me struggle through that. But I'm all right. It's good to be on with you guys talking United on the other end, so I don't have to host it as well. So that's pretty good.
Okay, a lot of pressure. Let's jump right into it. Manchester United 3, Tottenham Hotspur 0. I mean, where do we start with this one, Scott? Ollie was under a lot of pressure. He was getting fired right after the Liverpool game. He was getting fired the next day, and as the week went on, we realised they weren't going to sack him. Obviously, we all have to get behind the club, regardless. I'll be honest with you, I was surprised with his formation. But then again, talking to other United fans, supporters, and with Wayne as well, he had to do something. He couldn't send that same team out because then he might as well just have not come back from London. He went to 3 at the back. Scott, I want to start with you, as I said, as a current centre back and a former Manchester United centre back who has played in like 4-4-2 and stuff like that. First of all, was Ollie brave to make all those changes? And secondly, how difficult is it, or is it a lot easier to play in a 3 versus a 2 at the back? And I'd just like to get some kind of insight from you on. We played 4-4-2 against Liverpool, then we went to 3 at the back. With 2 wing backs. First of all, how did you see the game of Manchester United against Tottenham? What were your thoughts on it? And then, do you think he's going to take that type of squad forward in the way that we are in that formation?
Yeah, I think initial thoughts, obviously a huge win. You said it yourself. He was getting sacked every day last week, so it was a great reaction and response from the team and from Ollie himself. I thought every player done the job, put a shift in, and with the change of shape, I think it was reasonably be bold. He could have easily played a similar sort of shape. I think it was natural that he was going to drop off and not try and press because obviously what happened at Liverpool. I just think a lot of Ollie's success has come from, especially when he first took the job on the caretaker basis, he played on the counter attack, and some of his results were absolutely outstanding. Thinking of PSG away, even that game, they didn't really. I remember watching it. They didn't press PSG all over the park. They got compact. They sat in the shape. The centre backs were really sat on the edge of the box, and the strikers were in their own half. But what that does, Dave, is when you play that way, it leaves so much space in behind the opposition. And when you've got the pace of Shaw and Wan-Bissaka on the flanks, and the quality of Cavani and Ronaldo from with Bruno, roaming around, it's so much easier. I can remember the manager saying in his first meeting how we were going to play when he come on the job, and he said to the strikers, he said, it's all about scoring goals and winning games. He said, if I ask any of the strikers in the room, would you prefer to play in really tight spaces with 11 men behind the ball who are the defence sat on the edge of the box, or would you prefer to play against 2 or 3 defenders with 60 yards of space in behind them? And that's how United played. It was for Tottenham. So you flip it round and think of Tottenham trying to score, break down Man United. They had 11 men behind the ball, no gaps in between. The gap from the Ronaldo and Cavani to the back 3 who were on the pretty much 5-10 yards in front of the edge of United's box. There was no space. Harry Kane was poor. Son didn't do anything. It's very, very difficult to play against that. And then on the flip side, when you win the ball, you've got so much space. You've got the whole opposition half to run in behind, to make runs. And it just leaves the other team, you sort of attract them onto you, and you've got so much space to exploit. So I think it was really, like I say, a bold decision to change shape and to play the way he played, because it's not automatic. You think of Man United over the years, you think 4-4-2, 4-4-1-1 with a number 10, a Rooney or a Cantona, just off a striker running in behind. Yep. Pace, power, attacking, crosses after crosses. And, he went against that, but there's nothing wrong with that at all. You can't be that stubborn to think. Well, I think maybe he was a bit stubborn against Liverpool. Thought, we're Man United, we can go and get after them. It's our biggest rivals. But maybe there's a bit of a realization after the game that Liverpool are maybe a level or 2 ahead at this moment in time. So I think he deserves huge credit for how he set the team up. On the switch of formation, I actually played right of a back 3 for 18 months while I was at Plymouth, and it is very different because there's loads of different ways you can play the 3-5-2 with the wing backs, because a lot of different, especially defensively for defenders, if you play a 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, you're always in a back 4. So generally the full back will have a wide player, a winger to mark. And then even if you've got 2 strikers, you'll be man for man as a centre-back. Or if you've got 1 striker, one will go tight, 1 covers. Whereas when you play with a 3 at the back, it can cause sometimes a bit of confusion because you have a man. So if you're playing against 1 striker sometimes, the coach or the manager will always say, he can never get turned. You've always got to have tight. There's 3 of you against 1. But sometimes, which is true, by the way, but sometimes there's a bit of indecision because you're thinking, is he his man? Is he my man? Whereas when you're playing as a centre back and a 2, it's pretty straightforward 9 times out of 10 who's picking up. If you're playing against 2 strikers, you'll have a man each to mark. So that can be the difficulty. The other thing was with the wing backs. I mean, like I say, there's loads of different ways to play. Obviously, United sat deep against Tottenham, but I've played in teams where, like I say, at Plymouth for 18 months, we played it where wing backs played against full backs of the opposition. They didn't really get back in too deep to defend as full-backs. They stayed as wingers, really. And we had the 3 centre-backs who would shuffle all across. And the wide centre-backs would take the wide players of the opposition. And if the team played with 1 striker, the middle centre-back would take the striker. But I played in 3-5-2s where you play as a 5, which United were, where the wing-backs take the wingers. Yeah. There's loads of different ways to play that shape. And it is different, like I say, when you play in a back 4, whether you play 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, a back 4 is a back 4. The rest of the stuff in front takes care of itself. But there is definitely a difference when you go to a 3 at the back, and it needs work. And listen to Ollie's comments after the game. I think they started their work on the Tuesday, so they were obviously really well drilled. And I think you could see that. I think it was clear that they all knew the job to a T. They made it really difficult for Tottenham. Like I said at the start, they had no space, they had no gaps to play. They made it really difficult, and they broke off that. And it was a great result.
I want to jump back to a couple of things there before I go on to Wayne. Dan has basically helped me with my question. He says that Ollie was really do we think he was very brave for playing that. His tactics were right, and you kind of half answered my question anyway, because I was thinking that we've been playing 4-4-2, 4-4-2, 4-4-2, and then all of a sudden you go to 3 at the back. And like you just said earlier on, sometimes it can get confusing because especially if you've got someone like, Harry Kane, where he's dropping off at times. And if you don't really have a man marker, if you're not really given a job to mark somebody, when I initially seen the 3 at the back, I thought it was a big gamble because I'm like, we haven't really worked on this. Varane's just back in the team. And that's what leads me on to that is that, did it all work so well because he was back in the team? Because I said to Wayne, I think after the game, was that the one thing that I wasn't looking at throughout the game was, Lindelof, and we weren't talking about him after the game. Is that because, Varane had such, the guy is such a calming influence back there, and he's always, he's always there at the right moment. If we didn't have Varane fit, do you think that Ollie would have went with 3 at the back and brought in like Eric Boy? Do you think the fact that Varane was fit is, I won't say forced his hand, but made his decision to actually go that way?
I mean, only Ollie could really answer that. I'm going to say I think he was definitely going 3 at the back because of how bad Liverpool was. Now, listen, Eric Bailly isn't as good as Raphael Varane, but he's got pace and Varane played really well. But I think his thinking would have been, it was almost like the mentality shifted from Liverpool, right? We're going to go and get after Liverpool. We're going to high press them and this isn't a negative, but we aren't losing this game. We are going to be so hard to play against. We're going to be really horrible. And it's going to be tough for Tottenham, first and foremost. That was really set a stall out. And then obviously off the back of that, you break, you create. Man United are always going to create chances.
Yeah.
You've got the players they've got, Shaw, in it, how good attacking he is. Bruno, Cavani, Ronaldo. You're not going to play that. Them players are always going to create chances. They only need that, as we see in that one moment and that flash of quality. That was always going to happen. So it was as if obviously the whole world knew. Ollie knew he was under huge pressure to deliver a performance and a result. And it just felt as if that was the shift of, right, we're going to drop really deep. We're going to give Tottenham no space. We can concede the full-back areas and we're going to hit them on the break. And, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I say, I think you do associate classic Man United teams of real width, wide players, your Giggs, Beckhams, Kanchelskis, Ronaldo, Nannies. But don't forget, there's been times you think of some of the Arsenal games away in the Champions League, some of the counter-attacking goals. Sometimes you've got to play that way.
Moving up the field a little bit. Obviously getting Ronaldo back was, for me, absolutely fantastic signing. I really believe that. I truly believe he brings so much to the team on and off the pitch. But over the past couple of weeks, I felt he's been very isolated up there. I was hoping for a partner up there, and for me, there's no one better, in my opinion, than Cavani at this moment in time. The guy just chases everything. Wayne, Cavani came into the team. Ronaldo looked a different player, in my honest opinion, than what he's been doing over the past couple of weeks. And it worked both on the score sheet. Ronaldo, that pass for Cavani's goal, everything about that Cavani goal just oozed class. Right decision to bring Cavani in. Obviously, I'm going to say yeah because we won 3-0 and both scored. But do we keep that formation? Do we keep someone up there with Ronaldo? And if we do, where does that leave Jadon Sancho?
No, it's the $1 million question at the moment, isn't it? With the gamble that Ollie took was in dropping the 3. Well, in not having the 3 wide players, Sancho, Greenwood, and Rashford, because that's not sustainable long term, right? We all know that those guys are going to come in, they've got to play football. That was the only issue that I've got with the formation change, because like Scott said earlier, at the very start of Ollie's reign, his tactical workings with that team that he inherited were brilliant. There were results and performances at Spurs, Arsenal, Chelsea. He was getting big wins in those games and good performances and really strong defensive performances as well. So for him to move back to that shape or to try a different shape, it didn't surprise me that he could do it because I've seen him do it before. It surprised me that he did it with the pressure on, because I thought at that moment in time he'd just stick with the players that he's shown faith in, because he's tended to go that way. But you're talking about Cavani and Ronaldo. And it was clear what he did. He went for experience, didn't he? He looked around that squad. He said, I'm going to pick my experienced players. And what you got from Cavani and Ronaldo in that game, yeah, they scored the goals. But it was the timing of what they did. Not so much the pace. No, you're not going to get the pace. But you saw the timing for both of the goals. I mentioned this on the podcast earlier with Paul. Cavani and Ronaldo are both in offside positions when that move starts. And they come back and then they drop. I'm not being horrible to Rashford, Greenwood, or Sancho. But that's the experience coming in. That's their years of experience at the top flight. That's what they should be watching, saying, this is what we need to do. In the short term, he's kind of got to go with that because he's put his eggs in that basket. He's kind of said, all right, well, this is the formation going forward. You've got to see something like that in Atalanta. You've got to see something like that against City, probably against Chelsea and Arsenal when we play them. But those other players have got to come into the side, like your Rashfords, like your Sancho. Paul said earlier that he was surprised that Sancho didn't come on when Rashford came on because the game was comfortable at that point. So for me, I would say Cavani and Ronaldo have obviously earned their place as a partnership at the moment. However, it's... I just don't think it's long-term sustainable. At the moment, it's the best option. And if you're going to say, what 11 do you want to play a game of football tomorrow, you choose those guys. I just don't know going forward because of the riches that United have got. It's on Ole to find a solution to play those players.
Scott McTominay probably had his, one of his best games for Manchester United, I believe, in that formation. I thought he was everywhere. I thought he was, Ole came out after the game and gave him his verdict as man of the match. Scott, we got a question from Bat Time with Vaughan. Can you ask what he thought of McTominay? I thought it was the best midfield performance I've seen from a United player in years. I thought it was a very good performance. I really did for McTominay. I even think Fred chipped in with a decent performance. Yeah. What was your views on McTominay and fitting into? He certainly fitted into that system better than ones from previous week.
Yeah, I completely agree. I thought the pair of them played really, really well. And again, I just think it shows. So when them two were playing as a sitting two in central midfield, and because of the shape and the setup of the team, you're inviting Tottenham onto you and you've got your teammates so close in and around you. When they're pressing and ratting and winning the ball back, they haven't got to, they're only going 5-10 yards, so they can go really quick, really sharp, make tackles, interceptions, and it looks great. And then the other thing on that is when they do win the ball back, the teammates are so close. So them two players, as we spoke about before, they're better at doing the sort of dirty work and then passing it to Bruno, for example, or Ronaldo, Cavani, Shaw, and that's exactly what happened. Whereas you look at them against Liverpool, and the United are trying to high press with, Ronaldo. We all know Ronaldo. You can't really press with him up front. The gaps are bigger. Varane wasn't playing again, so you've got Maguire and Lindelof who don't really want to be exposed, and rightly so because of the pace of Liverpool's front three, especially Mane and Jota, Salah, whoever plays. So then Fred and McTominay are two in central midfield instead of, whereas on Saturday against Tottenham they had Shaw, Bruno, and the back three all within sort of 7-8 yards of each other. On against Liverpool they were 20, 25, 30 yards. So the gap, you just never get there. You look slower, you look leggy because you're never going to get there and affect the ball. Like I say, when against Tottenham and the front of the team to the back of the team is so close and they're in between that, the distances that they have to close down or press in are so much smaller. It means they can actually get there and affect it. And I believe that's why, the two of them played so well, especially with McTominay, because I thought he used the ball probably slightly better. And like again, the passes when they do win the ball, everyone's so close together. It's an easier pass to keep the ball.
Dan had also asked earlier on about Harry Kane. Obviously his transfer was dragged out in the media all the way through the summer. He had a decent Euros, back on the score sheet. Don't think he scored in the Premier League this season. looked a shadow of his former self the weekend. A lot of that's obviously down to the fact that the way United played, but Harry Kane can still always come up with a goal, come up with something. It's been said that the transfer to Manchester City that collapsed has completely affected Harry Kane. But wouldn't the manager see that in the training ground? I mean, from a professional standpoint, does it really affect you that bad when you consider how good Harry Kane is to now it's just like, the unthinkable could happen and that they drop him because he's really just not doing anything. I have some, lifelong Spurs fans who believe that that's what needs to be done. Harry Kane needs to be taken out of the team because the whole team has been affected by it. What's your thoughts on Harry Kane's form at the moment? And do you think the transfer is really the thing that's behind all this?
Yeah, 100%. Because I think let's get one thing straight. Harry Kane is world class, not just for the year or 2 years. What is it? There must be 5 or 6 years now.
Yep.
He's constantly 20 plus goals. So he's a world class, probably even longer actually. He's a top drawer, world class striker. Now he's probably thinking, from when they didn't do anything with Pochettino, he's probably thinking, he's 29 now.
Yeah.
He needs to go to Man City. If he wants to win anything, he basically thinks he's not going to win anything with Tottenham, with that squad of players. You think of the good Tottenham team. You had Dele Alli, who was on fire. He's nowhere to be seen anymore. They had Alderweireld and Vertonghen, who were really good centre-back partnerships. They're not there anymore. Hugo Lloris was, 4 or 5 years younger. He's not getting any. He's getting older now. Danny Rose was in really good form. They had Kyle Walker, who's gone to City and won stuff. So he's probably thinking, I'm this world-class player. I'm England's main man, England captain. If I want to go and win stuff and challenge for the Premier League, challenge for Champions League, the big titles, he needs to go to Man City. And we're led to believe, again, through the media, that he had a gentleman's agreement or some kind of agreement with Daniel Levy that hasn't come to fruition.
Sorry, before we move on from that, Scott, I mean, do they really exist in professional football? The fact that, Levy will sit there and go, you know what, I'll let you go next year. And with that amount of money involved, is that not something contractual you should have written in? Or is it just one of those things where it's like, you can't really write that in because, from a contract standpoint, you have to stick to it?
Yeah, I think it would have to obviously have something black and white from a contractual point of view, whether if Tottenham don't qualify for the top 4, for example, you can leave for this price. Or if Tottenham don't win a trophy, you can leave for this fixed price.
Great point.
Stuff like a release clause. He might. I think he signed his contract a good few years back. I think he signed a 5 or 6 year deal.
Yeah, it was 5 years.
2 or 3 years ago. So at that time, maybe he was thinking Mourinho might have just gone in, or Pochettino was there. He might not have. Him and his agent probably didn't think of that. So maybe it was the summer before. He might have. What I think might have happened is he's gone to Daniel Levy and said, "Listen, if we don't win a trophy this year under Jose Mourinho, let's shake hands that I can leave for a certain amount, or what." And he's probably said, "Yeah, okay." I think the famous one is with Ronaldo and Alex Ferguson, isn't it? He wanted to go to Real Madrid.
Yeah.
Ferguson said, "Give me another year." Listen, them things happen all the time, especially not at the top level, but let's say in League One at my level, for example, players will say, if a team from the Championship comes in with me, I want to go. That might be in contract. You might get, like you're saying, if a certain club from a certain league bid a certain amount, then it automatically triggers. But I think a lot of the time, clubs are reluctant to put them things in, so it become a sort of gentleman's agreement. But then obviously you haven't got the written black and white, so it's always
But that completely sours it then, doesn't it? Because if you got a gentleman's agreement, but if there's no set price, the problem that Levy has now is that they're not going to get that money that they thought they want to get from last year. Now, they may get near it, but they're not going to get it. They're not going to get the 120, 150 million, especially if he finishes the season in the form that he's in right now. And, Man City are not going to come in and offer another 120 million. It happened with Manchester United with Jadon Sancho. They got him for 20, 30 million less the following year, albeit he's sitting on the bench. But this is the game that this is the risk that you take. But in your opinion, you think the whole thing, the whole transfer thing, the gentleman's agreement, it's affected him so badly that, because like you said, he is world class, and you don't just lose that in a season. So this is playing the back of his mind, and I can understand it in a way if they've given him that agreement. Now, I don't want to really use the word he's sour about it, because, he's a highly paid professional, and he should be putting it in every week. It's just not for him right now as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But no matter how, sorry, just coughing. No matter how professional or how much money you get paid, he's still a human being, and he still naturally will want to compete for the biggest trophies. He'll want to win I'm sure deep down he'll probably want to break Alan Shearer's record. He'll want to win the Premier League. He'll want to fight for the Champions League. So no matter how professionally he turns up every day, it's only natural. He's only a human being that you're going to see it in his body language. Well, you can. It's pretty obvious. The one that sticks out in my mind from the match against United is where he broke through down the right channel, and he just looked so hesitant, and there wasn't really a pass on for him, and he ended up kicking it, and the whole stadium booed. And you think that it just didn't look like Harry Kane. Harry Kane, 2 seasons ago, drives towards goal, and at minimum he has a shot. The keeper makes a save, and just little things like that you can just see and tell that he's not. It just doesn't look the same. And again, he'll be thinking, imagine if Man City go and sign Erling Haaland in the summer, and he'd be staying at Tottenham. Tottenham have just sacked Nuno Espirito Santo. It's not worked out there. They're going to bring in another manager. He'd be thinking, why I wanted to go to Man City. It's the only way he sees he's going to compete. Man United would be in link with him. They've signed Ronaldo, so that'll probably be gone. What if Man City can end up getting Haaland in a similar way of United got Sancho, where it's a cut down price? Daniel Levy's still asking for 150 million, for example. You're going to sign Haaland because he's younger. Yeah. So his head will be all over the place for sure. And like I say, he's only a human being. It's bound to affect his performances, as we're all seeing.
Before we move on, I mean, for me, footballers, especially the ones at the highest level, they get a lot of criticism for going to clubs for the money and just for this and just for that. It is refreshing to see that. I think we all know that even though Harry Kane would have moved to Manchester City and he would have probably been on a bigger, salary, he's actually moving there because he wants to finish his career with trophies in the cabinet. He just doesn't want to finish his career with a massive bank account. I mean, we could go back through many players that went to certain clubs for the wrong reasons. We all know that, in hindsight, they know it as well. But it is refreshing to see a player of Harry Kane's calibers thinking that I'm not just going to stay here and pick up an easy check with the fans that love me. I actually want to, I could retire now and live 3 times over without having to worry about money. But he actually wants to win trophies. And I think that's a good thing to see for a player of Harry Kane's ability. And I would take him tomorrow at Manchester United. I really would. I'd take Harry Kane tomorrow in a heartbeat. I don't think that's going to happen because I think, with the Ronaldo thing, I just don't know. I don't know where Manchester United are going to go next year. I think they will go in for Haaland as well because he's the younger option. But Harry Kane definitely a shadow of his former self. But again, form is temporary, as they say. Class is permanent, and Harry Kane is a world class striker. I want to just move on to something that I invited Wayne on here today. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, with the whole Ollie in, Ollie out, debate going on social media. Wayne's a very popular person on social media because of his works on Manchester United, and his success in the production world with the George Best and the 74 documentary as well. Wayne, the one thing I wanted to talk about is I've known you a long time. You're a very vanilla type of person. You sit on the fence. You don't tend to want to antagonize one side or the other. You're a prime example of why people go onto Twitter because they want to, and he's going to hammer me for this after. He's writing it all down. I'm saying all these nice things about him, Scott. You're just one of those nice guys on Twitter that you would think the last person that people would come for is someone like you with your personality. And like I said, you don't go left, you don't go right. You're just down the middle, giving a very detailed explanation of why certain things are happening at Manchester United. But yet, the media, the social media stooges came for you in the past 2 or 3 weeks. They give you death threats. They called you every name and everything under there. They threw everything at you. You were very professional about it. And I know from my personal experience talking to you, you definitely got a lot of support, but you also got a lot of private support from a lot of people high up the ranks in many different clubs and stuff like that. So you do know that social media is just a cesspool at the moment. I just want to talk briefly to you about it because, Scott, you're a professional footballer, but you're probably one of the few that hasn't decided to go into that world of social media. And I just want to get your thoughts on that after I talk to Wayne about it. Wayne, how you feeling now? I mean, with someone with your background or respect that you have online, I mean, it's obviously been a tough couple of weeks just because you have an opinion that people don't agree with.
Oh yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough sometimes because you put your opinion out there, and basically it's there to be received how someone wants to receive it. And when you're writing it in a tweet, obviously you're condensing what you think. And I don't, as you know, I don't tend to make a point within 2 sentences. I like to use like 4,000 words where maybe other people would like to use 10. That's just the way that I am. So I think the thing what's happened really in terms of my social media is that when Ronaldo signed, you post a few things about Ronaldo, and I didn't know this at the time, but there's a trend in football where individuals have fans, right? And that's been alien to me. I didn't understand that, but they do. A lot of people supported Mourinho, for example, and have stayed attached to the fact that Mourinho should still be United manager. And I didn't realise how vocal that community was. So, for example, you can praise Ronaldo, but the same people will hate you if you say something controversial about Mourinho. So you're antagonising the same people that you were pleasing a week ago, and it's a bit of a minefield, to be honest. And the thing what I've always felt with the United, anyway, just my thing as a fan is you just support the manager, right? You just support whoever's in charge. You support the club. You pay the money. You buy the ticket. You go and watch the game. You get behind the lads. No matter the result, it was tough going for the Liverpool game. It was really tough. And there was an old guy who will have seen bad results before. And he was like probably in his 70s. And he left after 2-0. So it was 2-0. It was like midway through the first half, and he got up and he went. And I'm saying he's seen games before. And you know what? I felt for him. I thought, I can't do that. I've got to sit through and watch this horror show. I did it with a 6-1 against City. We're going to sit and watch this for what it is, unfortunately. And we did. And it was bad. It was terrible. I didn't judge for the people for walking out. You know as well as I do, Davo, and Scott will know as well. The atmosphere with United and the travelling fans is unbelievable. They will always support the team and they will always support the manager. I'm not saying that to say that match-going fans are better than other fans. People support the club in their own way. But it is still meant to be support. So when what happened against Liverpool happened, I was good. I mean, I was heartbroken by what had happened, because that's the worst result I've ever seen in my lifetime. I was describing it as the worst result and performance in the history of the club. Like you guys were saying, you thought he was going to get sacked every day last week. I thought that. I thought you can't lose 5-0 to Liverpool and that you keep your position in that position. Fergie could have survived it. Busby could have survived it, but they had credit in the bank. Ollie doesn't have that. So I thought it was untenable. What really got me is I was gutted about that. And when I logged into social media, everyone was buzzing. They were buzzing that he was going to get sacked, and they were saying, and they were being personal about Ollie.
Yeah.
They were actually being quite critical of him, like personally, like that fraud, that weakling. He's not brave. Do they know Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as a player? A lot of them did. I know that they did because they've been around. How can you call Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a weak person? What he went through in his career, it's unbelievable. So the thing what I was saying was, you can be critical and you can say that you want the manager to be sacked and everything like that, but it's beyond the pale to be excited about it. And the other thing, what you would have seen as well, Davo, in that moment, all the people who said that they hate Ole and were personal about him were coming up with the lies and the rumours saying that they'd heard he was going to get sacked. And it created this massive ball of negativity. And obviously the club and the players see that. Obviously they do. Not sure how much of it they see, but they see enough. So everyone will have been seeing that kind of vitriol. And I didn't think that was representative of us as a fan base. And that it broke my heart a little bit to see that, because I'm a United fan, and that's not what it's alien to me. I know it's a new part of the support or the people who claim to be supported.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But I don't see it as part of what I associate with being a United fan. And that's what I was saying I was disgusted about. It's nothing to do with being Ole in or Ole out. And by the way, if people with long enough memories or long enough attention spans want to go back and check, I've written a book where I've talked about this in detail, about not being certain that Ole Gunnar Solskjaer was the right man for the job, about being worried that the Glazers had hired a convenient person that would deflect the criticism from what they were doing. And I was worried about that experience and everything, the lack of experience. So when that happened against Liverpool, like everyone, I was thinking, no, I think the job might be too big for him. It doesn't matter how supportive I am of him, of the manager, of the team. I thought, oh, that looks like it's too big for him. But there are ways and means. There are ways and means of going about that. You don't sort of start personally abusing. If Scott had a bad game, I'm not going to call it like Scott. We've talked before about on this podcast. No, you guys have against the game against Chelsea, where you felt like you had a poor game. I certainly wasn't calling you out for that. I was still supporting you, wanting you to come back in and play well and have a stormer the next time around. And people say, oh, you back him because he's a legend. I don't give him more time because he's a legend. I give him probably less time because he has less experience. But will it mean more if we win something with him in charge? Obviously it will. How can it not? That's not to say that I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt when things aren't going right. It just means that in a moment where there's not a massive obvious successor, and I still don't think Conte was a massive obvious one, where it's obvious that the club don't have a massive succession plan in place. They're not planning for it. Don't just sack him for the sake of sacking him. That's putting us right back to square one. Again, I'm not saying that's blind support. I still thought it was untenable after what happened against Liverpool. But don't get abusive about it. And all I was saying in that moment was, and it's so bleeding ironic, Dave, I was saying, you might have a right to criticise and support the way that you want, and that might be your version of supporting, but don't be personally abusive about it. You don't need to do that. That's beyond the line. You don't need to do that. And yet, everyone thought it was the other thing. So they were all personally abusing me, thinking that I was criticizing.
Some of the things people were saying, you were on United's payroll. One person actually thought you managed and played for the team. This is how much attention they pay to the actual tweet, because we all know when you put something in text format, there's no emotion to it, and people can completely misread it. But to get so personal and to be happy that we got beaten 5-0 by Liverpool, it blows my absolute mind. It does that, regardless of who we were playing, but Liverpool in particular, to think that, okay, we got hammered by Liverpool, this is a great day for us now, the manager's going to get sacked. The social media world is, Scott, when you were in the team of Manchester United, which was, was it 2011, 2012, 2013, social media really, it was there, but it wasn't there. You've obviously decided not to go on social media. Has anything that Wayne has said now convinced you to go on to social media?
Can I just jump in before Scott answers that? Before those tweets were aimed at me, I was messaging Scott and I was saying, can you remember a couple of weeks ago, I sent you a WhatsApp, I said,
yeah, you actually said you should think about getting back on Twitter. So obviously I actually had Twitter at the time because it was just new. It's quite an interesting story actually, and I made my debut against Newcastle and I was the best thing since sliced bread. The best centre. Honestly, because again, and I echoing what and following off on what Wayne's saying, all these people who tweet and it's very, like you say, you can get abusive. So I always think that there's the proper fan, like what Wayne is basically where you support the manager, you support the team through thick and thin. That's a proper fan. They're the ones who are, I mean, it's not the only, they can have other fans, proper fans who don't go to Old Trafford, but they're the ones who are there in the rain, no matter, every game at Old Trafford, singing, supporting the team. You know, they were getting clapped off Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at 5-0 against Liverpool on the telly. They're the proper fans. And then I almost separate that there's the social media. I wouldn't even call them fans, brigade, whatever you want to call them. So my personal experience was you're amazing, blah, blah, blah. And I was a young lad. And then after the Chelsea game, just abuse. You should never play. But the same people, they're probably the same brigade.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And but the reason I actually came off it was nothing to do with that really, because again, it was just sort of getting going, and you know, it was quite, I wouldn't say difficult to deal with because it was just new. You know, it was all Twitter and Facebook had been going a while, but Twitter was the new thing, and anyone can say anything.
Yeah,
you know, that's the big thing. I could, I mean, I'm not watching it obviously because we're doing this, but I could be watching Wolves Everton now, make a Twitter account and just tweet any player and say anything. You know, it's just bonkers that can still happen. And also going on from what Wayne said about not reading the specifics, people see what they want to see.
Yep.
People hear what they want to hear, and people see what they want to see, and they just jump on it. And like I say, I call it a brigade where if they're happy with Ollie, they can see a certain one, might be 5% that they like, that's it. All they focus on. If it's 5% they don't like, 95% good, they'll abuse and hammer the 5%. But anyway, going back to the reason I left Twitter was it actually came from Sir Alex Ferguson actually made, I think it was any player under 23, delete the social media accounts. Facebook and Twitter were like the main two. There was no Instagram at that time. And I remember having a meeting, and it was about like certain people getting pictures with players, and certain younger players were like sort of posting pictures about like basically what happens now about the training ground. And you know, he obviously had that much authority. And I remember having a meeting with the youth, all the youth team, all the reserves, and a few of the younger members of the first team. And he just said this was probably just before he actually probably would have retired. So about 6 months after I played for United. And he just said, and I think it was anyone under 23, I might be wrong, I've got it, you don't need, why do you need to, basically what he was doing was saying, you know, using 19, 20, 21-year-old lads, you're just getting started in the game, why are you posting pictures of the training ground? And I also think a bit of it, he was worried of, because then the whole world can see the gym or the swimming pool or the dressing room, or if anything might get leaked, if there's anything to do with the team. I personally think, when I think back now, that's what he was sort of getting at. And I remember deleting it, and everyone's like then in the chat, why are you going to delete it? Should we keep it? Should you change your name on it? But I remember getting rid of it. And again, it was nothing really to do with getting praised or abused. It was nothing to do with that. But I actually remember being so glad, because I mean, I don't know if you used to do it now. You used to spend like 20 minutes of your life just scrolling, reading nonsense most of the time. And I think, but I've just wasted half an hour there where I've just been sat on the sofa, and I'm actually still, I don't miss it. I never ever once thought, I want to get Twitter back. Not once. I mean, you know, people around you, you still get you don't have to have Twitter to get praised or abused, especially as a defender. You get abused more times than praised, because if you do all right, nothing's ever said, is it? But I used to be able to tell pretty much all throughout my career, not so much the last few years, but I could always tell my parents or friends, family would be at one of my matches, and let's just say I played well, you know, standard performance, a good 7 out of 10. A couple of things I could have done better, but overall, I had a good, decent game. And you come into the lounge after the game, or you'd see your friends, your family, and oh, well done there, and yeah, chatting away and chatting about the game. Oh yeah, but there was something in the second half I wish I'd have done. That's just normal. I'd say 99% of players have that. And then maybe the next day, probably more so the family. When I'd speak to my family, I could tell just by how they'd sort of get it into the conversation, the social media reaction, because I wouldn't go on it. But then after that, I'd have a little look. You know, this is probably going back 8-9 years now, but I could just tell from what how they spoke to me, and something they would have said that I'm thinking, she's seen that on someone would have tweeted that or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I personally think it affects. I mean, I'm sure your family's been affected, Wayne, and it affects you, all people around you. It's just such a horrible, or it can be such a horrible place to be. I mean, it has its pros, of course, of sort of like promoting things and getting the word out of good things, but at times, especially to do with football, because it's such a tribal atmosphere, isn't it? And it's so hostile, and people are so raw often when they tweet it. But again, a lot of the time, people are just idiots. You know, like I said, I could create a fake Twitter account now, and I could say, Wayne Barton, you are a plonker. Do I know? And what you said about Ollie, you know.
Have you been following my tweets?
No, like, can I just jump in on that point? Because Scott's he's so right. The difference with me, obviously, because I write, I have to kind of have that platform to promote the work and to engage with the people who read what I write. So it's a necessity for me.
Yeah.
But you're right in what you're saying. You turn up to a football match and you can have anywhere between 5 and 50,000 people shouting abuse at you, and you know, really, it's not personal.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that I got really good advice when I was just starting out writing, maybe like 4 or 5 books in. And someone had said to me about praise and abuse, and basically saying don't take either to heart, really, because you've got to have that balance. And maybe that's something that Fergie was saying for you guys. Under the age of 22, 23, you're not mature enough to know the difference, you know, to be able to mentally compartmentalize that. So yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm lucky that I know I can laugh it off a little bit, and Dave is one of my closest friends. He'll just send me the abusive tweets. He'll forward me to make sure that I've seen them, which is fine because I know that they're not personal, because they don't know me personally.
Because like what you were saying, Wayne, about Ollie, the people abusing Ollie, they haven't got a clue. They don't know anything about him. But the same people, they haven't got a clue anything about you. All they see is black and white writing on a tweet. Yeah. And they only see what they want to see, and they'll only have a go at what's their prerogative.
Well, here's a prime example that Jason has brought up. Social media toxic. People have been slagging off Sir Alex because of the Carrington last week. How crazy is that? This thing blew up on Monday morning, the day after the Liverpool game, and it follows on what you just said, Scott, is that people see what they want to see. The media, these journalists that get paid to do this job, and we know 80% of the time they're throwing darts at a dartboard to try and get a story. Ferguson was scheduled to get a new suit fitted for that day weeks in advance. Coincidentally, it was the day after Liverpool, and all of a sudden, Alex Ferguson was in Carrington to save Ole's job. So it created such a toxic environment on social media that Manchester United had to actually issue a statement about it and say that this had been planned, and Ollie and Sir Alex never even seen each other. And that's the one thing that I took it, that I looked at this and said, this is obviously bullshit, because if these guys, if they had that story, if that was real, one of them would have got a picture somewhere, and made it even more of a sense of a storyline. But it wasn't, and I knew there was more to it. But it got so bad that the club had to make a statement about it. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you are right. Someone says something on Twitter and it's like, oh, well, that must be true, because I just read it. Now I'm going to take that information and I'm going to forward it as my own because I'm really smart like that and I'm the first person to know it. And it fits perfectly in with what you just said. They read things and they believe it. But I want to jump back to the other thing as well, is that what you just said as well, is that, and what these, morons don't get is that, you've been a professional footballer all your life. And I don't want you to take this too lightly to what I'm going to say next, is that it's not that you're kind of, I would say at this point in your career, you're kind of used to the abuse of away ground you go, but people are going to say shit. 80-90% of the time, you're probably going to just brush it off and go, whatever. This is what being a professional footballer is all about. But your parents didn't buy into this. Your family members didn't buy into this. Your friends didn't. They didn't ask for any of this. And you make a great point of saying, because you're not on social media, doesn't mean you don't know about it. Because you go to dinner at your parents' house the next day and all of a sudden there's a somber mood and then someone brings up something and that's what these morons aren't thinking about. It's not the effect that that it has on you. It's the effect it has on everyone else around you. I mean, as a parent myself, if I was on social media and seeing all this, I'd spend my life hunting these people down. That's the problem, because a parent sees things completely different. I mean, you're a parent now, Scott.
Yeah.
I'm sure you see things completely different. You're tripping kids up in the playground because they looked at your daughter, stuff like that, pushing them over.
Yeah.
I get it. I do the same thing. So, and for that, Wayne and for Scott, as a supporter of football, as a person on Twitter, we can only apologize that you got to put up with this bullshit. You got to put up with this crap. Sending someone death threats over the fact that you made a very valid point. What goes on in their head that makes that? And Scott, my advice to you.
Do you know the funny thing is, if you bumped into that person in the street,
they wouldn't say a thing to you.
Yeah,
not a thing. They put their head down and walk, boy.
Absolutely. That's what's crazy.
Unfortunately, that's the world we live in now. Is that social media has turned social skills into a cesspool of crap, and people think that they can talk to people like that. But you are right. I mean, we've seen situations over the past couple of years where we've seen. I think there was a former boxer in the UK that hunted a guy down and knocked on his door. And he was like,
I'm seeing that,
"Hey, tough guy," and your man nearly, dropped 3 stone out of his pants in an instant. He's like, "Oh my God, this guy's gonna murder me now." So Scott, my advice: stay the hell off it. It's not worth it. Some people, I mean, Wayne used it. He'll admit, it is a good tool to use, especially if you're in that world that Wayne's in, that he wants to promote his book and he wants to get out there and he wants to get opinions from people. Because a lot of the times when Wayne's writing a book, he turns to social media, he asks people, and he gets some great feedback. This is just ridiculous that 3 years after Jose Mourinho was sacked, we have people out there that are issuing death threats because they never kept Mourinho. These are people, like you said, Scott, that and I know you're trying to stay away from this type of, topic on that, is that, let's be honest, these are people that have probably never stepped foot in England, let alone Old Trafford. These are people from all over the world, and I'm not having a go at them. They support Manchester United, are fans of Manchester United, I get that. But it's very, very different. They don't understand how much of a club Manchester United was, how much of a mess it was under Mourinho. Ole has come in and turned it around. But to abuse somebody and give death threats just because, and I'll be honest with you, Wayne's tweet it was kind of like a down the middle tweet. And people just read it the way they want to read it. So Scott, my 2 cents is stay the hell off it, and it has so much of a negative effect. I don't understand personally myself why footballers go on there to get the abuse. And I know a lot of them have interns and stuff like that do it, but at the end of the day, they kind of get to see it. You said earlier on, they're all human beings. They are, like Harry Kane, he's human. It's going to have an effect on him with what he was told. Same as social media. Why would you want to go on there and get abused all day long? Because 1 week you're a hero and the next week you're a zero. That's just the way it is. Football fans are the worst in the world when it comes to being fickle. We know that. I want to just move on. And before we finish now, actually, Dan has a question here. I'll put it up on screen here. Scott, do agents not push their players to be on social media to help build their brand profile, no matter their age? I know it's not easy, though. I feel for these young men coming into the game. That's a very, very good question. Now, I know you spoke earlier on about Fergie. When Fergie tells you you're not going to be on social media, you don't. I mean, I equate that to my own kids. I tell them not to do something, but I know they go into the room and go, well, he's not around now, I'll do it now. That's a very good question. Do agents, do they advise people that, hey, you want to get your profile out there? And this is what I mean earlier on about, I know some people use it because of certain situations within either their career or whatever. Let me just pop that back up again so we can see the question again. Do they put players to be on social media to build their brand profile, no matter their age?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's certainly in the last, I would say 5-6 years has been a huge thing I personally have seen, because again, when I was 17, 18, I mean, I think Twitter probably came in when I was 20, 21 possibly.
God, I feel old.
Yeah. So, but that's a huge surge in sort of, Instagram is big now, isn't it? And Twitter's obviously growing as well, and it's definitely, I think, a huge surge. And players, all they want to do is, some players lose a game at all levels, and they're putting up their clips on like the Twitter and the Instagram, and I'm thinking, you've just lost. Like, what are you doing? But it's all about perceptions. Is such a huge thing nowadays, isn't it?
Yeah.
Perception's actually probably more important to some people than actually what goes on over the white line, really. So they use all that to, like big agency companies, they promote, they put the players in a certain light that makes them possibly look better than what they are, or focuses more on the strengths, or gets the clips, shows the sponsorship deals. People have to constantly tweet and tag things, and Instagram tag things, and that's a bit that's changed. That I think is a bit. I don't really like it all, to be honest. Like I say, I see lads now who are 18 who are putting up clips from the youth team. I'm thinking, part of me thinks I'm being a bit of a granddad because times have changed and stuff like that. But I just can't. It just doesn't feel right. That I just think, what would I have been told by my youth team or reserve manager or someone like Sir Alex Ferguson? You're 18 years of age, you're playing only in the youth team, and you're posting clips on your Twitter or your Instagram like you're a superstar. Like, you've done nothing in the game. You haven't even played a game, one game, and yet you're acting like on your social media that you're this big hitter, and you're thanking people for sending you clothes, and it's just the way the world's gone. Like I say, maybe I have to adapt slightly and sort of accept it, but it just doesn't feel right with me. But to answer the question, I think that's a huge part. I've seen a huge surge in that in recent years with young players, like I say, tagging thanks for the boots off Adidas. And I mean, lads have always had boots and got free stuff, but you just say thanks very much. You don't have to put it out there, but it's all to do with, like I say, getting following and raising profiles of different stuff. But yeah, that's definitely a huge thing I've witnessed in the last few years, especially.
I want to finish up by having, getting some updates from you. You guys, and Markham, you've had a tough time of late.
Really tough.
A defeat at the weekend. How's things going? I mean, you guys you guys obviously have the team to turn around. You got one of the best strikers, I think, outside the Premier League at the moment. So if anyone can, help turn it around, it's, you have everything going. You have everything going in your favor in that regard. What's gone? You had a very good start to the season. You were banging in the goals yourself. Wayne was getting concerned that he'd have to buy a cookbook. I still think he does. Yeah, quick update. I mean,
we're going through a really, really tough spell. I think, don't forget, this is Morecambe's first time in this division.
Yeah.
So it's probably one of the three smallest clubs in the league, really. So this was always going to come at some point. I think one thing is we haven't been able to put a consistent team out. We've had. Listen, I'm not making excuses here. Listen, results haven't been good enough. Performances haven't been good enough. So this isn't an excuse. I'm just trying to give some reasons.
No, but it knocks your rhythm as well.
Yeah, this happens at all levels. Just trying to think of reasons, why. I always think whenever I've been successful as a team, we've had a pretty settled team. We haven't really had to change the shape. And probably down to injuries has been a big part for us so far this season. We very rarely have been able to field the same 11. For example, I got really ill. I had to miss a couple of games last week. We've had people keep getting little niggly injuries. People have been suspended. A couple of people one of the persons had COVID, and it's just been, it's been tough, really. But like you say, we're not all. Of course, results have been bad, but it's important for us that we don't think all of a sudden we're a bad team, because 3 weeks ago I think we'd lost 1 in 6. So we were an amazing team then, and we're not an awful team now. Like I say, to put a perspective on it, this is the first time the club's been at this level. So we've got a really big game tomorrow night against Cambridge. I think it's, they'll be dead in around us as well. So hopefully we can win that game and start looking up the table again.
Well, I mean, the best of luck to you. We definitely keep an eye on your team now. We certainly do. We look out for your results. You're 20% on the road to getting Wayne to bake you a cake. While he's on today, is there any particular flavors you want him to avoid? Because I'm convinced you're going to get fired by the end of the season.
No, I'm not a fan of chocolate cake, Wayne. So stay away from the chocolate. Yeah, maybe a nice sponge cake.
I'm not a fan of baking cake, so.
So here's the thing: when it gets delivered and it's black, that's actually not the flavor, that's just Wayne's cooking skills. Yeah, burnt to nothing. When you put the knife in, it's going to just completely deflate. But But Scott, happy birthday to your daughter. I wish you every success this week as well, and for the season. I appreciate you coming on. Wayne, as always, thank you for being there in the background. I know there's, when myself and Scott are on, you're the guy on Twitter trying to make sense of what we're talking about. Well, from my side anyway, trying to make sense of what I'm talking about. But hope you guys are feeling a lot better over the next couple of days. And Scott, look forward to a win tomorrow night for both Manchester United and for Morecambe, and get another goal. Because I really need to see him bake a cake. I really do.
It'd have to be videoed from start to finish, wouldn't it?
100%.
Yeah, camera up in the kitchen.
Yeah, and the fire brigade on standby. Last thing before we leave, Wayne, you and I have discussed this in the past, and me and Scott have touched on it. And when you wrote Fergie's fledglings, you want to tell him the story about contacting him on social media?
Oh, yeah. This would have been right after he abandoned his social media, because the idea was that Scott would be the last player in the book. He would be, because it started from day one with Tony Gill, and we had players from every single day of Fergie's reign. Not like 1,200 players, but we had 30 players, 20 players covering every day. And Scott was going to be he was the first choice to be the last player. And I know I've told you this already, Scott. So the idea was to contact you, but it turned out to be the fake Scott Wootton on obviously, once you've been on and left your account, someone decided to set up an account. Thankfully, they never engaged and never sort of fraudulently sort of said, I'll take part in it. But Ben Amos stepped in your place. But if I ever do a second edition, then I'm going to chain you down and make sure I get that interview.
No problem.
Yeah, it was great.
But don't they say you've made it as a celebrity when you've got two things, a stalker and a parody account on Twitter? You just need the stalker now, mate. So you got the parody account. So good stuff. And just before we end, Jason said, good luck in the FA Cup first round, Scott. Hopefully you can reach the third round and draw against Manchester United. How fantastic would that be? To Mark, are you going to bring two pockets, one for Cavani, one for Ronaldo?
Not too sure about that, Dave, but that would be
you'll need four.
That would be incredible.
4 pockets, two for those guys, and then for the shirts that you'll be trying to blag off him, Davo, and then the shirt off Scott's back.
Exactly. Well, it has to come with some benefits here. So, that would be fantastic. Obviously, if you got through, and I mean, I think all former players or former clubs that like to go back, and play against a club. But that would be absolutely fantastic. That would. But yeah, best of luck in the FA Cup. I know it's it's a very, very. It's my favorite competition. Always has been since the 80s. It really has. My first Manchester United game that I saw was Manchester United against Brighton, the FA Cup final. That just lit up my world. Absolutely lit up my world. And every year when we play in the FA Cup and we go out of it, a little piece of me dies, because I love that. I love that trophy. I just think everything it stands for. And I think it's starting to come back again, over previous years. I think it has. I think it's starting to come back. Nothing better than a joint killing, as long as it's not your club, though, So if you do make it to the third round, we're going to have a conversation. So, and if you get Manchester United in that third round, we're going to have a conversation. So, again, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for everyone for the questions. If you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. If you're not following Wayne on Twitter, please follow him, but don't abuse him. You can't follow Scott because Fergie told him he wasn't allowed to have his own Twitter account. So he's one of the lucky ones, trust me. So yeah, if you haven't subscribed, as I said, subscribe there. talkingtodevils.co.uk is our website. There's a lot of great articles on there. There's, after every game, Wayne puts up a report there on his opinion on how the game went. It's always really very good and very sometimes it takes you to read that to really understand what just happened in that game, especially when you're at the real lows of Liverpool and the real highs against Tottenham. But as Fergie said, it's only Spurs. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining in. I appreciate it.